This is your girl Wakeji Kamore, and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time that you get to listen to this. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for staying with me in this Bible summary and actually moving to the YouTube channel with me. That was really great, guys, and I really appreciate it. Remember, if this podcast is good for you, it could be good for someone else, so please do subscribe, like, and share it in your natural spaces. And also, just like a comment over there will not hurt. Encourage this girl to talk, because man, this work needs encouragement. So today we'll be covering chapter 23, and this starts off with Balaam's arrival after he had been summoned by the king of Moab, Balak. And the chapter is about the messages that Balaam had for Balak. Guys, remember, Balaam is the spiritualist who had been invited by Balak, who is the king of Moab, to come and curse the Israelites so that Balak can be able to drive them out of his country. So I'll be reading word for word and from the easy to read version. So kindly keep track. Let's get on it. So it says, Balaam said, build 7 altars here and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me. Balak did what Balaam said. Then Balak and Balaam killed a ram and a bull for each of the altars. So that's 7 bulls and 7 rams. Then Balaam said to Balak, stay here near this altar, and I will go to another place. Then the Lord will come to me, and he will tell me what I must say. Then Balaam went away to a higher place. God came to Balaam at that place. And Balaam said, I have prepared 7 altars and have killed a bull and a ram as a sacrifice on each altar. Then the Lord said to Balaam, then the Lord gave Balaam a message for Balak and said, go back to Balak and say the things that I have given you to say. So Balaam went back to Balak. There's a lot of Bal. Oh gosh. Balaam is a spiritualist. Balak is the king of the Moabs. So Balaam went back to Balak, and Balak was still standing near the altar, and all the leaders of Moab were still standing there with them, in anticipation of the curses that this guy is going to come and give a spell on the Israelites. Then Balaam spoke, and this was his message. It says, Balak, the king of the Moabs, brought me here from the eastern mountain of Aram. Balak said to me, come curse Jacob for me. You guys remember Jacob is also equals to Israel, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So he's come curse Jacob for me. Come speak against the Israelites. But God is not against them, so I cannot speak against them either. The Lord has not asked for bad things to happen to these people, so I cannot do that either. I see these people from the mountain, and I see them from the high hills. They live alone. They are not part of any other nation. Who can count Jacob's people? There are many as the grains of dust. No one can count even a fourth of the Israelites. Let them die like a good man. Let my life end as happy as theirs. Then Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I brought you here to curse my enemies, but you have blessed them. But Balaam answered, I must say the things that the Lord tells me to say. Then Balak said to him, so come with me to another place. At that place, you can see more of these people. You can see all of them. You can only see part of them. You can only see a part of them. Maybe from that place, you can curse them for me. So Balak led Balaam to the watchman's hills. These hills was on top of Mount Pisgah. Then Balak built 7 more altars and killed a bull and a ram on each of the altars as a sacrifice. Then Balaam said to Balak, stay here by the altars while I go and meet God over there. So the Lord came to Balaam and told Balaam what to say. Then he told Balaam to go back to Balak and say these things. So Balaam went back to Balak, and Balak was still standing near the altar, and the leaders of Moab were there with him. Balak saw Balaam coming and said, what did the Lord say? So this is Balaam's second message. He says, then Balaam said this, stand up, Balak, and listen to me. Hear me, Balak, son of Zippor. God is not a man. He will not lie. God is not a human being. His decisions will not change. If he says he will do something, then he will do it. If he makes a promise, then he will do what he promised. He told me to bless them. He blessed them. So I cannot change that. God saw no wrong in Jacob's people. He saw no sin in the Israelites. The Lord is their God, and he is with them. The great King is with them. God brought them out of Egypt. They are as strong as a wild ox. There is no power that can defeat the people of Jacob. There is no magic that can stop the Israelites. People will say this about Jacob and the Israelites. Look at the great things God did. The people are as strong as lions, and they fight like lions. And a lion will not rest until it eats what it has caught, and it drinks the blood of what it has killed. What? Hey, this is not going good for Balak. Then Balak said to Balaam, you didn't ask for good things to happen to these people. You did not ask for bad things to happen to them either. Balaam answered, I told you before that I can only say what the Lord tells me to say. Then Balak said to Balaam, so come with me to another place. Maybe God will be pleased and will allow you to cast them from that place. So Balak led Balaam to the top of Mount Peor, which looks out over the desert. And Balaam said, build 7 altars here, then prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for the altar. And Balak did what Balaam asked, and Balak offered the bulls and the rams on the altar. And that is the end of this chapter. And I'm just like, hey, Balak, aren't you learning? Why are you killing all these bulls and all these rams? And it looks like the more you kill, the more blessed these guys. The more you sacrifice that this guy can cast people, the more blessed they get. Oh my gosh. Anyway, one of my favorite verses in this whole Bible chapter, not whole Bible, this chapter is verse 19, and it reads, God is not a man. He will not lie. God is not a human being. His decisions will not change. If he says he will do something, then he will do it. If he makes a promise, then he will do what he promised. Such an encouraging verse, you guys. Remember that Israel is God's chosen nation, and the descendants of Abraham, who he already blessed like so many years ago. Even during their years in slavery, they were still a blessed nation. Even in the 40 years in the wilderness, they were still a blessed nation. God doesn't lie, and all his promises and covenants are sure. He doesn't change. His character remains the same. He isn't weak, but is able to fulfill what he promises. And nobody can manipulate him or control God. God was with the people of Israel and reigned as their king. It was God who gave Israel their victories, beginning all the way from Exodus in Egypt. The nation was like an ox, and its strength was like a lioness or a lion, and its determination to catch its prey and kill it. Therefore, no sorcery could succeed against God's people, because God was at work in them and through them. The point in this verse is that God's truthfulness, his reliability, and his unchangeableness, I don't know if that's an English word, guarantee the promises and the blessings of God's people. God does not lie. He doesn't change his mind. He's not like a man who sometimes can lie, sometimes can change his mind. And God's faithfulness and his faithfulness on his character, that is, his faithful character, is a guarantee that every promise that he's promised to us is actually going to happen. God speaks and he acts. He promises and he fulfills. When God says something, he carries it through. He acts and does exactly what he says. God's promises are the guarantee of his blessing. And God's promises and blessings are irrevocable. They cannot be changed. God has promised to bless his people, and that includes not only the Israelites, but every believer, you and I. Therefore, when trials and problems arise, notice that being blessed does not mean that trials and difficult situations will not come, but that God will strengthen us and he will help us to conquer the trials. This is his promise, that no misfortune will conquer us. It will come. Misfortunes will come. It might even look like those misfortunes are about to bury us alive. But the promise is that no misery or no trouble will overcome us. Again, God is trustworthy, He is faithful, He is reliable, and He's unchangeable, and He cannot be manipulated. That means His promises are irrevocable. Therefore, the promises that He has promised us, me and you, are irrevocable. This is your girl Wakeji Kamore, and this has been Reflections by Wakeji Kamore.